The night I learned how heavy silence is, felt quiet as it kissed the corners of my hollow room where shadows breathe in gloom. The curtains swayed with gentle ache as though about to break, and in the dim of midnight's breath I felt the pull of death. The stillness curled so near, it echoed every fear. The night I learned how heavy silence is, held all I couldn't miss. It pressed its weight upon my chest and urged my heart to rest. The night I learned how heavy silence is, replaced what daylight gives. It carved my sorrow in the air with hands that felt too bare. The window glowed in faintest blue, a shade of something true. It cast a pattern on the floor of nights I lost before I touched the coldness at my side, where warmth once used to hide. And as the emptiness grew deep, I sank but couldn't weep. The darkness read my pain like softly falling rain. The night I learned how heavy silence is, reopened every quiz of things I begged to understand but slipped right through my hand. The night I learned how heavy silence is, accepted my abyss. It didn't push my grief away but taught it how to stay. And maybe quiet breaks the way a heartbeat shakes. It teaches us what weight remains when nothing else explains. The night I learned how heavy silence is became my precipice, a fragile place of breaking slow where all my fractures show. The night I learned how heavy silence is still lingers where it lives, inside the spaces I can't flee. It sits and waits with me. And now I know the bliss of how heavy silence is. The window where my thoughts refused to sleep stood watch while memories creep. It framed the dark in shades of blue that sank like something true. The moon trailed faint across the glass as hours slowly passed, and every shadow shifting near replayed what I still feared. The silence begged me stay, but thoughts pulled me away. The window where my thoughts refused to sleep held secrets I keep. It mirrored every part of me that longs to be set free. The window where my thoughts refused to sleep cut thinking far too deep. It let my doubts return again like old familiar friends. I press my forehead to the pane to feel the midnight rain. Its tapping formed a restless beat that matched my tired heartbeat. The street outside was nearly dead, but loud inside my head. 1,000 questions took their turn in waves that never burned. The darkness trembled slow as if it feared to know. The window where my thoughts refused to sleep let quiet gently seep into the cracks inside my chest where pain made its own nest. The window where my thoughts refused to sleep found memories I keep. It placed them softly in my view until they felt like new. And maybe restless minds find peace the moment binds, not in the day's loud constant call, but nights that hold it all. The window where my thoughts refuse to sleep remains a place I weep. It watches over how I break, then helps me stay awake. The window where my thoughts refuse to sleep still gathers what I reap, a truth that only night can show of things I never know. And in its quiet deep, my thoughts refuse to sleep. The night my hands remembered what my heart forgot. Arrived in trembling thought, I touched the pillow where you lay. In nights long swept away, the fabric held a fading heat, a ghost beneath the sheet. And though my mind tried to deny, my hands refused the light. The dark unwrapped the truth I lost somewhere in you. Tonight my hands remembered what my heart forgot. Returned the endless night, it brought the love I buried down back to this fragile ground. The night my hands remembered what my heart forgot. Reopened every spot where longing lived in silent pain, and begged to breathe again. I traced the edges of the bed where once your laughter spread. The moon fell softly on my skin, like memories creeping in. And though I tried to close my eyes, your shape began to rise, a silhouette of what we were. In nights I can't deter, a stillness held my chest and stirred the old unrest. The night my hands remembered what my heart forgot. Tied every broken knot, it showed the truth I fled before, still living in my core. The night my hands remembered what my heart forgot. Undid the things I thought were lost in years too far to see, still beating inside me. Maybe letting go takes longer than we know, when hands recall the tender past that hearts can't hold so fast. The night my hands remembered what my heart forgot. Retraced the pain I fought, it let me finally understand the shape of who I am. The night my hands remembered what my heart forgot. God still haunts this fragile spot where love once lived but couldn't stay, yet never fades away. And in that tender plot, my heart recalls a lot. That stayed awake beside my ache, refused to dim or break. It cast a golden trembling light across my longest night. Its glow draped gently on my knees, like warmth on winter breeze. And in its small unsteady shine, I felt a pulse like mine. The quiet leaned so near, it listened without fear. The lamp that stayed awake beside my ache helped me navigate through every thought I couldn't hold when all my hope felt cold. The lamp that stayed awake beside my ache lit truths I didn't take. It showed the cracks I hid from me with soft delivery. Bulb hummed low, a steady tone that kept me not alone. Its trembling flicker danced along, the shadows growing strong. I reached to feel its gentle heat, a comfort bittersweet. And in that moment I could feel a heart beginning heal. The stillness wrapped its glow darkness at the door so I could cry once more. The lamp that stayed awake beside my ache burned only for my sake, a tiny flame in night so vast that warmed my breaking past. And maybe little light is all we need at night, not blazing suns or fires wide, just glow that stays beside. The lamp that stayed awake beside my ache made room for what could break. It sheltered me through trembling hours with all its fading powers. The lamp that stayed awake beside my ache still glows for healing's sake, a witness to the tears I shed beside my weary bed. And there it softly wakes beside the heart it aches. The hours that watched me crumble quietly stood still impatiently. They lined themselves along my bed and held my heavy head. The shadows stretched across the floor like memories wanting more. And though my breath was wearing thin, they asked to let them in. The night inhaled my name and whispered soft my shame. The watch me crumble quietly, saw through my dignity. They kept the pieces where they fell inside my private hell. The eyes that watched me crumble quietly learned every part of me. They knew the thoughts I wouldn't speak when I was far too weak. I let my trembling fingers trace the emptiness of space where once your kindness used to lie. Before our last goodbye, and in the ticking of the clock, the truth began to knock, a slow admission from my chest that I had lost my best. The pain became a friend who didn't need to mend. The hours that watched me crumble quietly held on to what I'd be. They let me break without defense in aching innocence. The hours that watched me crumble quietly moved gently next to me. They rocked me through the sleepless night without demanding light. And maybe losing form is part of weathered storm of falling down before we rise with clear older eyes. The hours that watch me crumble quietly now shape my history. They gathered all my worn out parts and mapped them on my heart. The hours that watched me crumble quietly became my remedy, a witnessing of who I am without a will to stand. And still they sit with me in quiet loyalty. The fading moon that held my fragile breath felt close as whispered death. It hovered in the paling sky as if it heard me cry. Its silver glow across my skin pulled something deep within. And though my pulse was running slow, it kept me in its glow. The night exhaled in peace as trembling found release. The fading moon that held my fragile breath protected me beneath. It circled round my weary bones so I wasn't alone. The fading moon that held my fragile breath outshone my quiet death. It told me even broken hearts can rise in smaller parts. The clouds drifted in lazy line across that pale divine. They dimmed the moon in gentle shade as if to keep me stayed. I watched its light retreat and swell like something trying to tell a story meant for only me in midnight's fragile sea. The stillness pressed so near, it softened every fear. The fading moon that held my fragile breath reminded me of death, of all the pain I carried long inside my muted song. my fragile breath did not deny my death. The tiny deaths inside the soul that break us into whole. And maybe lunar light knows more than day or night. It sees the parts we never show, then wraps them in its glow. The fading moon that held my fragile breath saved pieces I had left. It kept them safe till dawn could rise and open tired eyes. The fading moon that held my fragile breath still watches what's beneath, a guardian of the parts that ache when no one stays awake. And in its glowing depth, it guards my fragile breath. Quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again was hidden deep within. It waited through my trembling nights and held the dying lights. A blanket draped across the chair still smelled of midnight air. And in that corner small and warm, my spirit felt reborn. The shadows eased their way, whispered it's not late. The quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again became my silent friend. It held the ache I carry long in spaces built for song. The quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again softened what might have been. It let the past unfold with grace inside that sacred space. I laid my hand upon the floor where warmth lived once before. The wood beneath my aching bones returned forgotten tones, a melody of older days when life felt less ablaze. And though the world had grown unkind, that corner stilled my mind. The night grew soft and near and melted all my fear. The quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again held truth beneath the skin. It let me exhale every tear I buried through the year. The quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again heard all I kept within. It held my sorrow like a friend who never asked to mend. And maybe healing starts inside the smallest parts, where nothing grand or bright appears, just space to face your fears. The quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again still keeps my oxygen, a sanctuary built from night that teaches me to fight. The quiet corner where my heart learned to breathe again remains where I begin, a little room where broken breath comes back from silent death. Now I breathe again, where quiet hearts begin. voice returned in fragile echoes, came soft as winter snows. It brushed against my trembling throat like hands that gently float. The words I lost in darker days rose in uncertain ways, and though the sound was barely clear, it still drew ever near. The stillness heard my sound and let it wrap around. The night my voice returned in fragile echoes, lifted what sorrow froze. It gave me back the quiet tone I thought was overthrown. The night my voice returned in fragile echoes, rewove my scattered prose. It shaped the syllables I feared until my voice appeared. I sat beneath the dimmest light and whispered to the night a melody I'd long forgotten, left wounded, bruised and rotten. But as the shadows curled around, my voice began to sound, a trembling hum, a broken sigh that reached into the sky. The darkness paused to hear the music of my fear. The night my voice returned in fragile echoes, softened all my throes. It echoed gently off the wall, a call after my fall. The night my voice returned in fragile echoes, let hidden feelings close. It wrapped them in a midnight hymn until they learned to swim. And maybe broken hearts need time before they start to speak again in softer tones from long abandoned zones. The night my voice returned in fragile echoes, knew everything I chose. It didn't question where I'd been or why I caved within. The night my voice returned in fragile echoes, still follows where life flows. A song in shadows meant to be the fragile sound of me. And echo after echo, my voice begins to grow. The daylight I was too tired to meet crept softly to my feet. It brushed the folds of rumpled sheets where sorrow's heartbeat beats. It climbed the corners of my room like sunlight made for gloom, and though it came with tender grace, I couldn't lift my face. The morning felt too wide for all I kept inside. The daylight I was too tired to meet paused in its quiet heat. It warmed the shadows on my bed and kissed my weary head. The daylight I was too tired to meet stood still on my retreat. It didn't rush or force me through, but waited till I grew. The birds outside began their songs of rights and rights of wrongs. Their melodies felt far away from where my worries lay. I pulled the blanket to my chin to drown the ache within, but in the glow of muted gold, my breaking grew less cold. The morning touched the floor and opened up a door. The daylight I was too tired to meet offered a gentle seat, a quiet place to just exist without a will to twist. The daylight I was too tired to meet held space where I repeat a little breath, a little sigh, enough to simply try. And maybe all we need is time to slow the speed, to let the daylight melt the fear until we reappear. The daylight I was too tired to meet now feels a bit complete. It glows along the edges bright of everything I fight. The daylight I was too tired to meet will someday feel like sweet, a place where I can stand again without the weight of end. And someday I'll be ready to meet the daylight steady. The mirror that refused to lie to me showed who I used to be. It caught the shadows in my eyes that hid beneath disguise. It traced the pain across my face, time never could erase. And though I turned my gaze away, it asked for me to stay. The truth became a flame inside my fragile frame. The mirror that refused to lie to me broke my uncertainty. It held the parts I never claimed, the ones I always shaped. The mirror that refused to lie to me saw who I couldn't be. It didn't judge the broken view, but asked me to be true. Reflections tremble soft, a world a little lost, the curve of shoulders bent in ache from all that hearts can't take. But as the morning settled in, it touched my battered skin, a whisper through the looking glass that gently led me past. Acceptance held me tight like soft and fragile light. The mirror that refused to lie to me held quiet dignity. It showed the wounds I used to hide from every tear I cried. The mirror that refused to lie to me shed on reality and let me see in clearer tone that I was not alone. And maybe truth is kind when gently redefined. The mirror doesn't have to sting to show a broken thing. The mirror that refused to lie to me helped set my spirit free. It held my shaking honesty with calm sincerity. The mirror that refused to lie to me still shapes who I will be, a witness to the pain I bear and what I now repair. And learn to look at me. The walls that remember when I still believed held dreams I once conceived. They carried echoes soft and faint, like warm forgotten pain. The years had peeled their colors thin, but still they breathed within a memory of who I was before the world became a pause. The dust along the frame still whispered out my name. The walls that remembered when I still believed kept fragments I retrieved. They didn't let my hope decay, but tucked it far away. The walls that remembered when I still believed softened the pain I grieved. They let the past unfold in hue of things I never knew. I trace the patterns of the cracks that climb the plastered backs. They looked like rivers cutting through a map of something true, a childhood dream, a broken vow, a love that's missing now. Each line a path to when I grew too fast for what I knew. The echoes touch my chest in ways I never guessed. The walls that remembered when I still believed held moments unperceived. They carried laughter in their grain, mixed softly into pain. The walls that remembered when I still believed saw every tear I heaved. They watched me break, they watched me mend. They stayed until the end. Softly in the deep, not gone, not lost, just tucked away till we return someday. The walls that remembered when I still believed still hum when I'm relieved. They stand as proof that I was here through every doubt and fear. The walls that remembered when I still believe now help me to proceed, a place where ghosts and dreams align in memories that shine. And in their quiet I learn how to believe. Darkness that sat beside my breathing stayed long after the grieving. It wrapped itself around my chest and begged my fears to rest. The air was cold but strangely kind, a whisper through my mind. It stroked the trembling in my ribs like soft dissolving fibs. The night became a hand that tried to understand. The darkness that sat beside my breathing held everything I'm needing. It watched my heart be slow and weak when I had no words to speak. The darkness that sat beside my breathing stopped sorrow from deceiving. It let me feel without retreat the ache beneath my feet. Leaned against the silent wall and heard the shadows call. They shaped my thoughts in fragile tones so I wouldn't be alone. The moon was barely painted thin, but warm against my skin. A flicker born of distant skies reflecting in my eyes. The quiet held my face, gentle space. The darkness that sat beside my breathing knew all that I was weaving. The broken stories in my mind I left behind unsigned. The darkness that sat beside my breathing saw tears I was conceiving. It didn't push them down or through, but let them soak the blue. And maybe nothingness is where we decompress. A stillness meant for hearts undone, too tired to outrun. The dark beside my breathing became my quiet healing. It held me in my fragile state and whispered, it's not late. The darkness that sat beside my breathing knows when my pain is seething, so it stays close through every night until I meet the light. And there it stays repeating beside my fragile breathing. My last goodbye still glows beneath the sky. It silver brushed the wooden grain where I once knelt in pain. I touched the ground with shaking hands in hopes it understands the words I couldn't dare to speak when I was far too weak. The night wrapped tightly round without a single sound. The moonlit floor where I left my last goodbye still asks me why. It holds the shape of who I was before the final pause. The moonlit floor where I left my last goodbye feels warm when I deny. Whispers soft through silent air that I once knelt right there. The shadows stretched along the boards like long forgotten chords. They hummed a song of fading years, of buried hopes and fears. I ran my fingers through the light as if to hold you tight, but even in that silver glow you slipped from what I know. The quiet shook my bones like echoes of your tones. The moonlit floor where I left my last goodbye still doesn't let it die. It keeps the moment pressed in place, a ghost of your embrace. The moonlit floor where I left gentle cry of everything I tried to keep but lost in restless sleep. And maybe letting go moves slower than we know. The heart must leave a piece behind in places intertwined. The moonlit floor where I left my last goodbye no longer asks me why. It simply holds the tender ache of choices I must make. The moonlit floor where I left my last goodbye will live as years go by. A sacred space where loved ones stayed before it slowly frayed. And still beneath the sky, it keeps my last goodbye. Empty bed that memorized my sorrows knows all my lost tomorrows. It learned the weight of nights I cried and tears I tried to hide. The blankets curled around my form when I was far from warm. And though I begged the pain to go, it settled soft and slow. The stillness read my ache and never let me break. The empty bed that memorized my sorrows held hope I couldn't borrow. It cradled every shallow breath I took to cheat my death. The empty bed that memorized my sorrows saw all my bruised halos. It wrapped itself around my chest when I could take no rest. I pressed my cheek against the sheet where dreams and nightmares meet. The scent of yesterday still stayed in memories I made. And though the room was full of air, it felt like you were there. The lingering warmth inside the night washed dim beneath the light. The darkness stroked my skin to let the truth begin. The empty bed that memorized my sorrows still waits for my tomorrows. It knows the shape my sadness takes and what the silence breaks. The empty bed that memorized my sorrows softens all my shadows. It holds me through my rising fears and hides my falling tears. And maybe hearts need space to mourn at their own pace. A bed to hold the weight we shed of words we never said. The empty bed that memorized my sorrows heals slower than it follows. But still it keeps my broken part inside its silent heart. The empty bed that memorized my sorrows knows all my lost halos. It lets me drift in trembling peace until my sorrows cease. soul still goes where quiet sorrow flows. The breath I took when I finally let myself break was more than I could make. It filled the hollow in my chest where I denied my rest. My shoulders trembled under weight of everything too late. And though my voice refused to sound, my tears came crashing down. The darkness held its stance, gave my grief a chance. The breath I took when I finally let myself break taught me what hearts can take. It let me crumble without shame, without denying blame. The breath I took when I finally let myself break undid the damned up ache. It flowed through every shattered scene like waking from a dream. I leaned into the quiet air, too weak for any prayer. The room absorbed my quiet fall and echoed through the wall. For once I didn't fight the fear, I let it draw me near. And in that storm inside my chest, I learned what breaking blessed. The shadows held me tight throughout my longest night. The breath I took when I finally let myself break was more than I could fake. It filled the places left behind by all I couldn't find. The breath I took when I finally let myself break set free what I forsake. A piece of me I never knew, still waiting to pull through. I took when I finally let myself break became my first awake. It let my heartbeat start anew in fragile shades of blue. The breath I took when I finally let myself break still echoes for my sake, a memory of gentle fall that let me rise at all. And now it softly stays in all my fragile ways. The shadows that waited until I was ready to speak stayed quiet through the week. They lingered by my window frame without a face or name. They didn't push, they didn't pry, they simply stayed nearby. And though I feared their heavy air, the stillness took a seat beside my faltering beat. The shadows that waited until I was ready to speak were gentle, calm and meek. They let me gather breath again before recalling when the shadows that waited until I was ready to speak knew secrets I keep weak. They touched the silent notes inside I didn't dare confide. I watched them move along the wall, so patient through it all. Their curves like softened silhouettes of all my old regrets. They mirrored every part of me in fading memory, a dance of moments left unsaid. Beside my weary bed, the night became a guide for truths I couldn't hide. The shadows that waited until I was ready to speak stood firm through every leak of tears that traveled down my face in slow, unhurried pace. The shadows that waited until I was ready to speak made breaking feel less bleak. They held my shaking honesty until I let it free. And maybe we require darkness to inspire the words we're scared to finally voice when given no other choice. The shadows that waited until I was ready to speak stayed through my growing weak. They listened without asking why. Each time I tried to cry, the shadows that waiting until I was ready to speak still gather once a week, a silent choir standing near to help me face my fear. And in their patient streak, I learn at last to speak. I realized the silence knew my name. Nothing felt the same. It drifted through the narrow space between my breath and face. The room grew heavy all at once, a weight I couldn't shun. But in that depth of quiet air, I felt a gentle care. The darkness leaned in close, as if it somehow knows. The night I realized the silence knew my name, softened all my shame. It echoed softly through my chest where fears refused to rest. The night I realized the silence knew my name, reframed the hurt I claim. It held the pieces falling through, whispered, I see you. I folded slowly on the floor, too tired to ask for more. The shadows stretched along my knees as if to offer peace. My heartbeat thudded like a drum against the things I've come to bury deep beneath my skin, where pain has always been. The quiet gripped my side as though it never lied. The night I realized the silence knew my name, untangled what became the tangled knots inside my mind. I never could unwind. The night I realized the silence knew my name, no longer felt the same. It stroked the fears I used to chase with slow and tender grace. And maybe silence holds calm at night for souls afraid of light. The night I realized the silence knew my name. Join me in my shame, not to remind me of the ache, but help me when I break. The night I realized the silence knew my name. Still flickers like a flame, a soft reminder in the dark that knows my deepest mark. And now within its claim, the silence speaks my name. That fell before I understood why. Came quiet as a sigh. It slipped along my weary skin from somewhere deep within. It gathered memories in its path, both gentle ones in wrath. And though I didn't feel it start, it traveled through my heart. The stillness paused to see what broke inside of me. The tear that fell before I understood why, refused to let me lie. It carried reasons I denied, too long, too swollen eye. The tear that fell before I understood why, was not afraid to cry. It brought the truth I buried deep, back from forgotten sleep. The moonlight traced the shining trail of stories grown so frail. It sparkled in the quiet light, like sorrow turned to white. I brushed it gently with my thumb as more began to come, and though the pain felt far from near, my tears drew it sincere. The night became a friend who didn't try to mend. The tear that fell before I understood why, unlocked the things I hide. It softened corners of my chest that never got to rest. The tear that fell before I understood why, arrived to clarify the ache that trembled in the blue of thoughts I never knew. And maybe broken parts speak first through leaking hearts, before our minds can comprehend what shadows try to send. The tear that fell before I understood why, revealed what didn't die, a piece of love I carried still against my fading will. The tear that fell before I understood why, still lingers in my eye, a little truth in liquid form that breaks before it's warm. And falling from the sky, it shows me quietly why. long road back to who I used to be, stretched endlessly, as gravel humming underfoot, where my old shadow stood. I walk beneath the tired moon, too numb to hope too soon. Each step a question I once knew, but now must walk anew. The wind brushed past my ear, as if to calm my fear. The long road back to who I used to be held more than memory. It scattered pieces of my past across the nights I missed. The long road back to who I used to be was slow and painfully, yet in each step I found a trace of my forgotten face. The trees lean gently overhead, as though by sorrow led. Their branches swayed in somber tune, a hymn beneath the moon. I paused to breathe the quiet mist of moments I had missed. The road beneath me cracked and worn, still carried dreams once born. The darkness pressed in tight, didn't dim my sight. The long road back to who I used to be held bittersweet degree. It made me walk through every year where I had disappeared. The long road back to who I used to be unveiled my history, the hurt, the hope, the fading thread of everything I fled. And maybe broken souls find truth in losing roads. We shed the masks we used to wear to breathe a cleaner air. The long road back to who I used to be slowly unburdens me. Each mile removes the weight I dragged across my dreams once snagged. The long road back to who I used to be now softly welcomes me. I walk it not to be the same, but learn my rightful name. And as the night sets free, I walk back into me.
Song my heart wrote while I slept was one I never kept. It drifted through the midnight air, too soft for me to share. A tune composed of whispered fears and half-remembered tears. It rested gently in my chest, where sorrow finds its rest. The melody was shy, like something learned to cry. The quiet song my heart wrote while I slept was tender as it wept. It stole the fragments of my ache and shaped them for my sake. The quiet song my heart wrote while I slept was something my soul swept into the hollow left inside, where longing used to hide. I woke to find the fading note still trembling in my throat. It lingered like a fragile breath, too soft to conquer death. Yet somehow in its gentle tune I felt a deeper It hummed its burden in my bones in delicate hushed tones. The quiet song my heart wrote while I slept quietly intercept the parts of me that fell apart to stitch again my heart. And maybe hearts create the things we can't translate, a melody for wounds unseen to soothe the in-between. The quiet song my heart wrote while I slept still echoes where it's kept. It plays in moments faint and small whenever shadows fall. The quiet song my heart wrote while I slept is where my hope has crept, a whispered hymn of where I've been, now living deep within. And softly, note by note, my heart completes its song it wrote.
The fading light inside the longest night held on with fragile might. It flickered in the corner dim, a trembling, lonely hymn. Its glow was barely holding form, yet somehow still felt warm. A stubborn flame that dared to stay when hope had slipped away. The shadows swayed around to its unsteady sound. The fading light inside the longest night fought back against my blight. It showed that even in the pain, some brightness can remain. The fading light inside the longest night led me through inner fight. It kept my breaking soul in view when I had no one new. The air grew colder in the room, a softness filled with gloom. The windows rattled at the breeze of quiet dying ease, but still the little flame held strong against the dark so long. It pulsed in rhythm with my chest, a lullaby for rest. And though my tears fell fast, it stayed until the last. The fading light inside the longest night protected what felt right. It cast its pale and gentle tone across my shaking bones. The fading light inside the longest night gave comfort in my plight, a flame too small for most to see, but bright enough for me. And maybe every heart must fall a bit apart to let a smaller spark survive and keep our hope alive. The fading light inside the longest night still guards my scattered sight. It glows inside the broken seam of what I dared to dream. The fading light inside the longest night has never lost its fight, a witness to my wounded years that shines through in its dimmest light. I learned to face the night